You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday the 26th of March 2014. Secular school used £70,000 of the speakers to call pupils to Islamic prayers. Fury at school plan to force teenagers to share unisex toilets. Girls as young as 11 will use same bathroom facilities as 16-year-old boys. Romanians started crime spree 24 hours after arriving in West Bromwich. 89% of Venetians vote for independence from Italy with withhold taxes to Rome. Has the National Front broken France's two-party system? Germany plans to curb EU migrants' benefits to stop welfare tourism. Sisi's anti-Islamic campaign may backfire. Egypt and Saudi Arabia to pressure Qatar at Arab summit over its support for Muslim Brotherhood. Thought for the day, points to watch. And finally, a new country doctor. UK news. Secular school used £70,000 speakers to call pupils to Islamic prayers. The government is investigating serious allegations against Parkview School, including a claim that £70,000 was spent on speakers used to call Muslim pupils to prayer. A non-religious state school at the centre of a plot to install Muslim staff is under investigation for allegedly spending £70,000 on loudspeakers to summon pupils to Islamic prayers, it has emerged. Parkview School in Birmingham is facing an inquiry by the Governor's Education Funding Agency amidst fears it misused taxpayers' money. World at 8. This is where the anti-Christian bias is strong and running through the entire so-called educational system. Repayment should be made by local Muslim authorities and put towards helping a beleaguered Christian church or setting up a Christian class, even if attended by only one Christian child. It is worth it on principle. Fury at school plan to force teenagers to share unisex toilets. Girls as young as 11 will use same bathroom facilities as 16-year-old boys. Plans for the Tower School in Ashford, Kent were condemned by Childline founder Esther Ranson, who said it was one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. The move will mean that girls as young as 11 will share the bathroom facilities with 16-year-old boys. World at 8. What, not enough money to have separate facilities? Go to the Parkview School in Birmingham. They should have money to spare. In fact, £70,000. Romanians started crime spree 24 hours after arriving in West Bromwich. Pair jailed and faced deportation for breaking into car at retail park after arriving in UK day before. Two Romanian men who began committing crime in West Bromwich just 24 hours after they arrived in the UK have been jailed. Kjorten Florin and Sebastian Mattis, both 21, were arrested in the town centre last Wednesday, March 19th, shortly after a Ford Fiesta was broken into on Astle Retail Park in the town centre. Police said they believed the pair came to the UK solely to go on a crime spree after they were jailed for 2 weeks. The men had been spotted acting suspiciously in the area and Florin was seen to take a black bag and a phone out of the boot of the car. Police on patrol in the area spotted the pair along with a third man in nearby Victoria Street and arrested them on suspicion of theft. During interview it emerged that they had only arrived in the UK from Romania the day before. World at 8. Our weak authorities deport them? They would rather lose them, and that is what they will do, after 2 weeks of bed and board courtesy of the British taxpayer. European news. 89% of Venetians vote for independence from Italy. Will withhold taxes to Rome. Inspired by Scotland's hopes for independence and hot on the heels of Crimea's 95% preference for accession to Russia, 89% of the citizens of Venice voted for their own sovereign state in a referendum on independence from Italy. As the Daily Mail reports, the proposed Repubblica Venetia includes the 5 million inhabitants of the Venetia region and has been largely driven by the wealthy who are tired of supporting the poor and crime-ridden south. Venice pays €71 billion in taxes and receives only €21 billion in services and investment. The ballot appointed a committee of 10 who immediately declared independence from Italy. Venice may now start withholding taxes from Rome. World date. Wonder why the US, Europe and Japan have not announced the referendum illegal and announced sanctions yet. The reason? No oil or gas in Venice. In fact, it is still sinking. Has the National Front broken France's two-party system? France's National Front, Front National, claimed on Sunday it was now the third force in French politics and had destroyed France's traditional left versus right political balance, following its strong showing in the first round of local elections. The National Front is taking root just as it wanted to do, and the crop is pretty exceptional, FN leader Marine Le Pen told TF1 television. She added that Sunday's strong performance marked the end of the bipolarisation of French politics. Her claim was supported by several commentators in the French press. Bipolar politics is dead, declared left-leaning daily Le Monde on Monday. It's been replaced by a three-party system including the Socialists, UMP, centre-right opposition and now the FN too. World at 8. Oh, for the French public here. Our lot of diversity and UAF retards will just sit and watch Sharia take over. It might get hairy when their six-packs are taken or their daughters, but we'll have to wait and see, won't we? Germany plans to curb EU migrants' benefits to stop welfare tourism. Germany is set to introduce strict new laws to tackle welfare tourism, including giving migrants just 3 months to find a job before being kicked out. A special panel was set up earlier this year to investigate welfare abuse in the country, and tomorrow its report is due to be published. Among its recommendations are proposals to expel those who commit benefit fraud and limit child allowance to EU citizens who are registered taxpayers in Germany. But concerns have already been raised that the proposals will be against EU law and could not therefore be implemented. World at 8. This is a case of being hoist with your own petard in it. World news. Sisi's anti-Islamist campaign may backfire. Daniel Pipes writes, an Egyptian court in short order sentenced some 529 people to death today for the killing of a single police officer. News like this gives one pause. Very tough treatment of Islamists is indeed needed to repress this totalitarian movement, including rejection of their efforts to apply Islamic law, keeping them out of the mainstream institutions, even excluding their parties from the democratic process. But Field Marshal Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's extra-legal crackdown on Islamists will likely backfire and help the Islamist cause by winning them broad sympathy. World at 8. Perhaps the Egyptian Christians will not turn the other cheek this time and back el-Sisi. He is their main hope at the moment, and that of the moderate Muslims, if there are any left. I like el-Sisi. He is my main man at the moment. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Egypt, Saudi Arabia to pressure Qatar at Arab summit over its support for Muslim Brotherhood. An assortment of Arab nations will likely use an Arab summit this week to try to pressure the tiny but wealthy Gulf nation of Qatar to stop supporting the Muslim Brotherhood and other opposition movements throughout the region. Thought for the day. Points to watch. It seems a wasted effort to warn the general public, or the great British public, or the chattering or non-chattering classes, that the wool is being pulled very firmly down over their eyes. Because most of them are being indoctrinated as we speak, and also the budget has just done the rounds as well as the news with the apparently rising economic growth of the UK. Of course, whilst the presenter was announcing this, it showed a picture at the same time of the Chancellor standing in front of a Tata truck, which is of course the name of an Indian-based company that now owns all of our steel and a goodly proportion of everything else in this country. You may say growth for some, but not many. The allusion to more jobs was spoken of, but of course this is just an illusion. The powers that be create a few more blue-collar jobs and then bring in more migrants to do them. So thus the great British worker loses out again. But not on paper, and that is where our huge national debt is increasing by the day, on paper. All any government has to do is to stop the foreign aid programme forthwith, and most, if not all, our national debt would be paid off. But do they do it? No, not a one. Why, you may ask. The problem is that nowadays the state, and I mean most states, should use one problem to cure another. But they don't. They use one problem to create another problem, which needs yet another problem to create another. And I think you're getting the picture. It is a circle of problems vanishing up the arse part of the main problem in a never-ending, self-perpetuating myth of committees, quorums, forums and speculations, and all of which require yet more money to fund or supposedly solve, which of course they never do. It's money for jam and jobs for the boys. The British National Party has several solutions to many of the problems, but of course that old hat racism rears its tired, ugly and much used head, if anything nearing a solution to the vast amount of problems that massive immigration brings to our small island are suggested. It is definitely verboten to even suggest that the illogical stance and acceptance by our governments of strangers into our midst over a long period of time does not benefit our society one jot, and in fact it detracts from our society to a very great degree, especially unchecked and unmonitored. This is common sense. It is not racism. The so-called main parties are teetering on the blocks now about the subject of immigration and pussyfooting around with the usual cooked up and selected pictures, facts and figures on immigration to the UK. It will end with the entire subject, regardless of who gets in next year, becoming once again persona non grata or racist. The one party being hailed as the second coming is of course UKIP, with all the old age pensioners down in West Sussex applauding the new tax breaks on savers and supposedly transferring this to their local UKIP candidates both for the EU elections and the general next year. They should be so lucky. You would have to be a real retard to vote for these people. The UKIP does what it says on the badges, gets the pounds rolling in for themselves and their leader Farage the Mirage, because that is what he is, a facsimile of a political leader, and beyond that smile there is nothing. He is somewhat honest in that he applauds immigration, foreign aid and the EU Parliament. What would he do about the ever-growing immigration problem? Nothing. Just get himself off to a mosque and convert, because that may well be where our future and finances lie in the UK if UKIP gets any more seats anywhere. My thinking is you might as well be hung for a sheep as for a lamb, and if you have nationalistic tendencies, why deny them? Why hang about on the edge of politics when you can get in there and stir the pot? In amidst the rantings of the far left and unite against everything scroats, there is a fence, and we nationalists of the British National Party are firmly on the right of that fence, whilst everyone else is balancing on or around it, trying to be popular and get more voters in. That may pay, but it ain't doing the best for your country. I think we live on an island of which the general inhabitants, hopefully still mainly English or white, listen to us but don't digest anything. There must be a synapse in their brains that reroutes our sensible suggestions to the back of their brain to be promptly forgotten. This must be the case as, judging from the national news, papers or media, we are all nearing war with Russia while sympathising with various Orientals throwing themselves around and shouting over their albeit dead relatives, whilst being blackmailed into encouraging fracking in our countryside so that we don't have to depend on Russian gas, and having our NHS spending time and money on girls from the Middle East and Northern Africa who have suffered clitoral whatevers and still giving birth over here, whilst liver disease soars by over 40%. We also give media coverage to women who feel they are invisible when they hit 51, and we have an Indian supervising a full probe into how our Metropolitan Police Force is run, whilst bleating about the inevitable death threats received by Saint Doreen Lawrence, and also basking in the fact that there is global warming and all our future summers will be bloody hot. Oh joy, what part or parts of this is bad? All of it, my friends, all of it. Firstly, we should certainly leave Ukraine, Crimea and Russia alone. They are not our problem. Certainly no more so than the assassination at Sarajevo was before the World War I, or the invasion of Poland World War II, or indeed the expected bombing of Pearl Harbor, war with Japan. We should not listen to certain things as they have proved wrong in hindsight, and we have been warned. The missing plane now apparently found miles off course. No one has thought of another reason for this plane going down, if indeed it did. It could have been an act of heroism from the pilots, not terrorism. Who is to say that the two people travelling on false passports were not carrying a virus to Beijing? Whilst I'm happy to have a virus on Chinese territory, viruses spread and the pilots might have gone off course to prevent this happening. We will never know, and all efforts to be made to prevent anyone knowing, but I would think that unless this plane was landed in some jungle, somewhere, that all these people are dead and the relatives should just stop giving the paparazzi all those very embarrassing pictures of screaming people. It is too much, too late. Also, there is very little love lost between communist China and Muslim Malaya. Female circumcision. These women should not be here at all. Africa is not part of the EU, although most of them come through Europe. We should not have the problem of catering to them with their multiple births and problems. We have enough of our supposedly growing elderly population to look after. Send them home. Liver disease soars 40%. I'm not surprised with our politicians and state of the country. I would drink now more than ever, but I have a problem. Being a pensioner, I cannot afford it. Women who feel left out once they hit 51. Stupid bints. Of course they do. It's only in France that mature women are appreciated, not in the UK. Hell, even in this country, in days gone by, once you hit 30 you were over the hill. And in China and Japan you have to be a 12-year-old schoolgirl to cut it. The less said about the Middle East and Muslims in this respect the better, I feel, and the same goes for the African culture, or rather lack of it. Personally, I don't care. You don't hear of hostage situations or serial killers or sex traffickers or Muslim grooming happening to women of my age, do you? Thankfully no. I rest my case. I can relax at long last. As for our police, words fail me, and I will be doing an expose on them at a later date. But I think I'm echoing all the thoughts of thousands, if not millions of people, not necessarily nationalists, who are sick of the sound, smell and sight of the sodding Lawrence family and wish they'd never migrated to the UK in the first place. In fact, they say a lot for deportation immediately. Never believe anything you read or hear in the news or the media, apart from the World at 8, that is. It is mostly, if not all, misinformation and leftist propaganda. Remember that when you go to the polls. And finally, new country doctor. A young doctor had moved out to a small community to replace a doctor who was retiring. The older doctor suggested the young one accompany him on his rounds so the community could become used to the new man. At the first house a woman complains, "I've been a little sick to my stomach." The older doctor says, "Well, you've probably been overdoing the fresh fruit. Why not cut back on the amount you've been eating and see if that does the trick?" As they left, the younger man said, "You didn't even examine that woman. How'd you come to the diagnosis so quickly?" "I didn't have to. You noticed I dropped my stethoscope on the floor in there. When I bent over to pick it up, I noticed half a dozen banana peels in the trash. That was what probably was making her sick." "Huh," the younger doctor said. "Pretty clever. If you don't mind, I think I'll try that at the next house." Arriving at the next house, they spent several minutes talking with the younger woman. She said she just didn't have the energy she once did and said, "I'm feeling terribly run down lately." "You've probably been doing too much work for the church," the younger doctor told her. "Perhaps you should cut back a bit and see if that helps." As they left, the elder doctor said, "I know that woman well. Your diagnosis is almost certainly correct. But how did you arrive at it?" "I did what you did at the last house. I dropped my stethoscope and when I bent down to retrieve it, I noticed the preacher under the bed." You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozar and I wish you all a very good night.